Hello. All right. So we are back as usual. My hair is crazy. Just got out of the car. Okay. So we are back for another live Q&A. Ask me anything. You guys sent in some great questions this month. All around Thanksgiving for the most part. There was one question about math curriculum. So let me talk about the Thanksgiving first. And then as you guys come on, if you have any other questions that I'm not addressing, feel free to put them in the chat and I will make sure I get to those. Okay. All right. So first of all, Thanksgiving. Because those of you who read my book, Just Breathe and Take a Sip of Coffee, Homeschool Simply and Enjoyably, you know that we took the entire month of December off for our Sabbath break. And so a lot of you were asking me, do I also take off the whole month of November? No, because that would be a little crazy. However, what we did do in the majority of November was I used our natural preparations for Thanksgiving, the family gatherings, the cooking, all of our lessons, most of our lessons for the most part, revolved around what I was already doing. Okay. So I didn't add to it. We were a very much an eclectic homeschooling family, but also very unit based as well. And so I did do a lot of like little mini units during the month of November, but don't let that scare you. You can either go find some really cool units, which I'm going to talk about one of mine in a minute. Or you could spend time creating your own. But really, you don't have to because there's so much going on, as you know, during the month of November as you prepare for Thanksgiving, however you celebrate it, that you really don't have to develop or create anything new. Just go with the flow. Go with what you're already doing. Now, every family does things a little bit differently. So take what I share and tweak it so that it fits your homeschooling. Okay. But like for instance, like I said, we didn't take the entire month off. We did take a Sabbath break the week of Thanksgiving. That was our natural Sabbath 7th week break there. But the things that we did, so like for instance, when I say use the things you're already doing to prep as your lessons and quote unquote your unit study or whatever, your read aloud. So be more intentional about reading aloud during the month of November, right? So go to the library and take out all of the Thanksgiving books that you can find that you absolutely love. So we focused a lot on the picture books that dealt with the history of Thanksgiving, the Pilgrims, the Native Americans. We focused on, the actual first Thanksgiving. We focused on the proclamations, the presidential proclamations, and how Thanksgiving became a national holiday. There's picture books for all of those. And I have a list of some of our favorites that we used. But also, I would get just really fun, silly Thanksgiving themed books. Like it was a take on The Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly. It was an old lady who swallowed a turkey, right? And so it just has this progression to it. The Night Before Thanksgiving, which is really a fun story. Just some other ones that deal with kids who are trying to save turkeys from becoming the dinner, right? So we did a lot of fun, silly Thanksgiving books as well. And that was also when I took home tons of picture books that were about pumpkins and squash and the season of fall and things like that, and leaves and the changing of the trees and things like that. And so during the month of November, just be more intentional about reading aloud each day. And when you do, make your read aloud very science minded or history minded, right? And that way you're killing two or three birds with one stone. So you're getting your read aloud done, you're having great conversations about it. And maybe one day you read about pumpkins and you're learning some science. Maybe another day you're reading about, another one of some of my favorites. I would get those multicultural books that talk about how Thanksgiving is celebrated in different ethnic groups and backgrounds. And so I think one of them is called, I think it's Rice for Thanksgiving or something like that. But it just talks about how different families celebrate Thanksgiving and the different foods that they eat. And another fun one or a great one is called Everyone Eats Bread, I think it is, where it talks about just all the different types of bread and ways that it's cooked and eaten, and things like that. So anyway, so if you read a book like that, you're learning about multiculturalism and geography. And then if you're reading just some really fun, silly books, it could be writing prompts or inspiring your kids to write their own story about the night before Thanksgiving, right? So things like that. So just be more intentional about making sure you include read aloud, but use those types of books in your read aloud time. Okay. Now, in my unit that I put out every time during this year, it's called Traditions and Treasures. It's a Thanksgiving mini unit. In that mini unit, I have a book list that's 3-4 pages long, and it's full of all these kinds of books, the history ones, the multicultural ones, the ones with recipes, the silly Thanksgiving ones, the ones related to pumpkins and fall and stuff like that. I even have a couple of suggestions for chapter books that you can read, okay, during the month of November with a Thanksgiving theme. So just be more intentional about your read aloud time. So if it's one of those crazy days and all you have time to do is read from your Bible and maybe read a couple of picture books, and that's all you can do today because you're busy cleaning, or you have to pick up grandma from the airport because she's coming in to visit, or your co-op is having 5,000 different parties and fun field trips you want to go on, that's fine. Just make sure that whatever you read that day is intentionally history or science or something like that. Okay. Another thing that you're already going to be doing, maybe not this week or next week, but the closer you get to Thanksgiving, unless you're like my mom, who used to start prepping all of her Thanksgiving way early and then she froze a lot of it because gumbo just tastes better after it's been sitting for a while. But anyway, I digress. So you're going to be cooking, if not this week or next week, at least the week after. You're going to be doing a lot of grocery shopping as well, right? So as you're cooking, be intentional about your cooking. Have your kids come alongside you. If they're younger, let them help you make the pie crust and talk about the shapes and all the sizes and things like that. If they're older, they're helping you with the measurements. And so there's so much math involved, right? In cooking, in grocery shopping, in creating a budget and a list for all the people that are coming over or you're bringing to a friend's house, right? That, let's just say again, it's one of those crazy days. Let's just say it's the week before Thanksgiving, and you just don't have time to get through all of the things you had planned that day or that week, and the kids never get to their math workbook or their Saxon or whatever it is that you use. Don't feel guilty if one or two of those days, or maybe the whole week, you replace their math workbook or their math lesson with some real life math lessons, right? So that would be your cooking, that would be your measuring, that would be your grocery shopping. So all of that is math. And so don't feel like you don't have time to let your kids help you, or you have to cram in the math workbook even after you spent an hour measuring and doing fractions and things like that as you were baking different pies. Okay. So math is involved. That's how we would do a lot of our math during the month of November. Okay. Another thing that easily can come up during the month of November, again, don't add to what you're already doing. Just use what you're already doing to prep for Thanksgiving as your lessons. Okay. So just like you might replace 1 or 2 days or maybe a whole week of your math lesson or your math workbook with real life math application, do the same thing with writing. So we literally spent the entire month of November doing a lot of creative writing activities that had to do with Thanksgiving, but we also took the month of Thanksgiving to thank others. So we did this really fun project every year. I called it Thanks for Giving. So instead of Thanksgiving, it was like a play on the words. So Thanks for Giving. And at the beginning of November, the kids always wrote, they brainstormed a list of at least 20 people in their lives that they were thankful for, or that they wanted to be intentional about thanking them. And so we would brainstorm this list. It involved pastors and grandparents and aunts and uncles and friends and senseis and directors and coaches and the mail server, the firemen, the firefighters. So they would literally brainstorm all the people they could think of in their life who they knew personally or help them indirectly in some way. And then every day, depending on how many people were on the list, every day the kids would hand make and handwrite a thanks for giving card or letter, right? So when the kids were younger, I basically wrote out for them something to copy. So I showed them a letter format. So it would say, dear grandma, or it would say dear, and I'd have a fill in the blank so that they could put the person's name with comma. And then I would say, thank you for, and I would leave it blank so that they could thank them for something specific. And then it was usually a Bible verse of some kind that had to do with Thanksgiving. And then it would say sincerely or love Joseph or Francesca. And so that was their copy work. And then they would just make each one more personalized with the fill in the blank. And then as they got older, they actually made with arts and crafts different cards. And then they wrote their own thank you. So again, that was called Thanks for Giving. So every day you could have a writing assignment or some sort of writing activity where they're being grateful, but they're also doing handwriting and composition as well. Okay. Some other really fun Thanksgiving activities or writing activities we used to do is my kids loved writing the story of the first Thanksgiving or any Thanksgiving, actually, from the perspective of the turkey. And so we would talk about point of view, we would talk about personification and what that is. And then we would brainstorm, how do you think the turkey, if they could talk, how do you think they would feel about Thanksgiving and all the stuff that goes around them, right? And so we would brainstorm feelings, we would brainstorm descriptions of things, just all kinds of stuff. We would talk about dialogue. What do you think the turkeys would say if they were all huddled in their little coop and they were talking about, man, what's going on here, whatever? Okay. And so they would write from the turkey's perspective about Thanksgiving, which that was always a fun one. Another thing that the kids, I would have them do as kind of like a brainstorming activity before the thanks for giving writing. Sometimes I would just give them a sheet of paper and I would tell them, okay, write the ABCs down the page vertically. And I want you to think of something, anything, any person, anything that starts with each letter of the alphabet that you're thankful for. Right. And so we would do that, or we would play Scattergories, if you're familiar with that game, where you have different categories, and then you roll a letter die, and then the kids have to come up with different items or things in that category that start with that letter. So we would do it with a Thanksgiving theme, right? So the categories could be vegetables, it could be a cornucopia, it could be foods that you eat or pies that you eat, just different stuff like that. Okay. So those were just all kinds of fun things that we would do for our writing activity each day or each week that we didn't have to do a formal grammar workbook page or a formal written report in our grammar or language arts textbook. We actually didn't use them at all during the month of November when we were finally using a formal curriculum, because we didn't use a formal language arts curriculum until the kids were like in 6th or 7th grade. So when we did use a formal curriculum, we would not open it up the whole month of November and actually December. And we would do these kinds of writing activities instead because they were all useful and meaningful. And then as it got closer to Thanksgiving, the kids would always make personalized place cards to put on the table, right? Okay. So do you see that? Just don't add to what you're already doing. Just make what you're doing your quote unquote lessons for the day. And it's probably going to be a whole lot more fun and meaningful if you do. Okay. And also, we would do an awful lot of nature studies. We were big Charlotte Masony kind of people. And so we did a lot of nature studies during the month of November. And so, and that's super easy because we could literally go for a walk and we saw all kinds of pumpkins and gourds and things like that outside. We could go to the grocery to do that. We could go to a local pumpkin patch to do that. We didn't have to like drive and go on formal hikes to find different gourds and different, trees that were their leaves were changing. We would go on leaf hunts and then we bring them home and we would use it for our centerpieces. But then that's what our nature journal was. So we would draw whatever we found or we saw at the grocery or on our walk. And then we would just learn about those different gourds. You would be amazed at all the different types of squashes that are related to pumpkins. And we would, as the kids got older and as my daughter became vegetarian and then vegan, we would then research all the health benefits of the different gourds and squashes and things like that. And then, of course, we would then use those, the ones that we picked up and brought home, in our cooking. So we would make pumpkin pie and squash and baked squash and things like that, right? So all of that, be intentional about it. So if you're doing some sort of science this month, just put it aside for a while if it's not a nature study kind of a thing. And just do that this month and make it part of your preparation. So by doing this, they're also getting stuff for the centerpieces. They could also be carving them, painting them, using them as gifts, using them as just all kinds of cool things. Okay. And then, like I said earlier, what we would do in November, we would at least take a week, usually the week of Thanksgiving, sometimes the week before, to just learn or refresh what we already knew and add to it about the history of Thanksgiving. Like we would learn about the actual historical reasons for the first Thanksgiving, actually what happened, what was there. We would read about it. We would use picture books to learn about it. Um, I loved reading the presidential proclamations because they're so full of biblically rich verses and thanking God for his providential hand and things like that. And so, again, don't add to it. Just put whatever you're doing in history aside and do this instead, or keep doing what you're doing in history. Just be more purposeful and intentional about reading picture books that have to do with the history of Thanksgiving. Okay. So don't overload yourself, replace things, or use what you're already doing as your lessons. Okay. Um, Now, like I said, you can go find different units if you want. You could try and develop your own unit if you want. If you're that kind of person, I love doing that too. But I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. So, like I said, you don't have to do that. If you are looking for something that has all these things that I just mentioned and more, I do have a Thanksgiving mini unit. It's called Traditions and Treasures. It's at my website coffeewithcarrie.org. It comes with an extensive book list that I told you about. It also comes with all these writing activities I talked about, plus more. It even has recipes in it. It taught which you have your math and things like that. It even has like etiquette in it and how to set a proper table for a formal setting or an informal setting. It talks about paper folding or napkin folding, which is math. That's geometry and stuff like that. I also have like an art study in there. We would usually focus a lot on Norman Rockwell and one of his four freedoms during the month of November, because I actually, I love the one of the Thanksgiving table. So I've got that in there. There's a hymn study in there based on some of the different hymns, like Great is Thy Faithfulness and things like that. All of the kinds of songs that are related to Thanksgiving. All right. So, and nature studies, that's in there too. So, literally everything I talked about is in that and more. So, and again, you don't have to do all of these things. It's broken up into, I think, 4 or 5 different quote unquote weeks or themes, and they're based on different characteristics. So, like one is on content, one's being on grateful, things like that. And so all the activities that I list in there, the science activities, the math activities, the writing activities, the reading books and things like that, all focus on that particular character trait, maybe of contentness or gratitude or something like that. So again, it's written so that you can use what you want and not use what you don't want. So if some of the activities are too old for your kids, don't use them, or they're too young for your kids, don't use them. If you don't have time to do them all, don't, because that's not the purpose. The purpose is not for you to do it all. The purpose is to look at it and say, oh, we have a similar tradition, or we do this as well. This would fit really nice. So while we're doing this as a family, because we always do it, or while I'm cooking this, because I always do this to prepare for Thanksgiving, we can do this activity too, right? It even has a couple of arts and crafts stuff in there for you to do. So it's just a really fun little mini unit to just kind of, like I said, it's grab and go, print ready. It's called Traditions and Treasures, a Thanksgiving mini unit. So you can find that at my website, coffeewithcarrie.org. Okay. So for those of you who came in a little bit later, that was one of the questions, that was a lot of the questions actually that many of you sent in this month that you wanted me to talk about on this live, about what do you do during Thanksgiving or the month of November when you have so much going on, right? So I was just talking about what we do and how we do take a Sabbath break, but I also still do quote unquote formal lessons, just in a different way and with a different spin. Okay. And so if you're just tuning in and you have a specific question, it has nothing to do with Thanksgiving or anything, go ahead and put it in the chat and I will attempt to answer that for you too. Okay. Another question that came up this week, someone was asking me about math curriculum. And, that's a hard one because we all have, well, if you've been homeschooling at least 2 or 3 years, we all have something called the curriculum graveyard, where we buy all of these different types of curriculum that are going to save the day, whether it's math or reading or spelling. And for whatever reason, it doesn't work. It doesn't meet our needs. It's not what we thought it was going to be. Maybe it's too complicated on our end as the teacher. Maybe it's too simple or too challenging for your child's skill level, whatever it is, right? And so it can get very frustrating when we're trying to find that perfect curriculum, especially when it comes to math. And that's what I'm going to talk about because that was the question that came in. Now, keep in mind, there's no such thing as a perfect math curriculum. However, there will be quote unquote perfect math curriculum in different seasons for your kid. Okay. So what might work for one child isn't going to work for another child, or what's working for your child now, or maybe worked really well for your child a couple of years in a row isn't working now. That's actually pretty normal. Okay. So it's okay to change up the math curriculums that you use throughout your years. Okay. Now, I do highly recommend or caution that it's only November. And if you started a new math curriculum this year and it was quite expensive and it's quite time consuming and you feel like it's not working or there's lots of frustration right now, I do recommend not quitting it just yet and just making a couple of these accommodations first and see if that helps. And then if that doesn't, then come January, reevaluate, and then go ahead and maybe look into some other math curriculum to use. Okay, because sometimes going from one curriculum to another curriculum to another curriculum can also be part of the confusion. Now, don't worry about holes. There's not going to be holes. So, what I mean is don't worry about, well, I went from Saxon to Singapore to CTM Math to Math UC, and I just feel like when we changed those 4 different times, he missed stuff. Don't worry about it because all of the curriculums are basically teaching the same skills at the same level. And so he's going to get it in one way, shape, or form. Okay. Now, before you ditch the math curriculum you're using right now because you feel like for whatever reason it's not working or helping, first of all, start looking at your math workbook page or your math lesson as you're not a slave to it. Your kid's not a slave to it. The teacher guide is full of activities and a whole bunch of questions on overload. Okay. So you don't have to do it all. So before you switch up a curriculum, start doing a couple of things. One day, have your kid obviously just do the even. Next day, have your kid just do the odd. Another day, have your kid just do the practice, if it's that kind of curriculum where it's got practice and then it's got review questions, right? One day, have your kid just go over the concept with you, and then that's it. They don't do any actual written work down, right? Have your kid one day. Also, another thing to do is switch up. So every other day. So one day he actually does paper and pencil. Maybe he does all the odd questions that day. Then the next day he doesn't do anything in his workbook, but he plays a math game with you to review that concept. So if your kid is learning about multiplication, then one day he does all the even problems that have to do with the new skill and that multiplication. Then the next day you play a fun game of multiplication battle, or you get Connect Four that has the multiplication theme, right? And so you play a game that is reviewing that skill. Then the next day he goes back to his workbook, but now he's going to do just the even that day. Then the next day, you don't do the workbook. He actually plays a game where he's practicing, or you do something real life. Maybe you guys do some cooking and you triple the recipe. Because, I mean, let's be honest, it's November. So if you have a lot of people coming over, or you're making multiple pies for church and friends and gatherings, you're going to have to triple, quadruple the recipes, right? So do some sort of real life activity with that skill that he's learning. Then the next day, you go back to the math workbook and you have him do maybe just a practice that day. Okay. So try doing something like that first before you totally ditch your curriculum. All right. The other thing, if you are going to change up your curriculum and you do have multiple kids, when you change up your curriculum, I highly recommend, if possible, you get the same publisher for all of your kids, just at different levels. So, like for instance, if you're going to be doing Saxon or Singapore math with your seventh grader, then try to do Saxon or Singapore with all your other kids. Or if you're doing Good and the Beautiful math with your third grader, which is it's great, but it's also very teacher directed with scripts and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot to get used to. Then use the Good and the Beautiful math with your fifth grader and your eighth grader. And the reason why I say that is that you, as the teacher, if you have multiple kids and you're already teaching your kids multiple levels of math, that is going to be time consuming as it is. So once you get used to how a curriculum works and how to prep for it and how it teaches things, then you've got that part down pat. So you're just working on teaching the different concepts to the different grade levels. Okay. So if you're doing Saxon with your eighth grader, and you're doing Good and the Beautiful with your second and your third grader, and you're doing teaching textbooks with your fifth grader, you might go a little crazy as the teacher, trying to flip from, oh, well, teaching textbook does it this way, Saxon does it this way, Good and the Beautiful does it completely different over here. Okay. So that's my suggestion, that if you do decide to ditch what you're using, to try and maybe use the same publisher or curriculum for all of them. Okay. Now, for those of you who are looking for maybe taking a break from math for, the curriculum you're using right now, because it is just killing you and your kid for whatever reason, but you're not ready to give it up just yet. You just want to take a little break from it. Then November is a great time to do that, because of all of the real world math applications they're going to be doing anyway, where they're applying these skills. Also, go to the library and get your hands on tons of different math picture books. And each day, just read a different math picture book and talk about the math concepts in it, right? So I have a list of my favorite math literature picture books. You could go to my website. When you subscribe to my website, if you scroll down, it's one of the choices. So if you want the math picture book list, you subscribe in that particular box, and then I send it to you. But there's things in there like circumference, where it's all a series. It's all about circles and circumference and pi and all that kind of stuff. And there's the Charles Bridge Adventures. Each one deals with a different math concept. Plus, there's books on multiplication and fractions and division, and you name it. There's so many. So take a break from your curriculum this month and just read some really good math picture books. Play some fun math games, build up their confidence. So maybe the reason everyone is so stressed out over math right now is because maybe the concept your student is learning in their math book right now is too hard for them and they're not quite ready for it. Well, take the time during November to put the curriculum aside for a while and play really fun math games to review skills your child already knows. Okay. What this will do is two things. It will help review and reinforce those skills, right? So maybe he's really good already with his addition, but he's struggling with multiplication and division. Play a bunch of addition and subtraction games. It will review the addition and subtraction. Second, it will build his confidence. So it will remind him that he is good at math. He does know how to add, he does know how to subtract. He's really good at that. And then the third thing is it brings back the fun. So there's a good taste in their mouth when it comes to math because they're playing fun games that they're good at and they're doing well with, instead of every day doing a super hard, challenging lesson on, say, multiplication that they're not quite ready for yet. And so each day it just leaves a super bad taste in their mouth when it comes to math. Okay. So think about doing that before you give up your math curriculum. Okay. Just yet. And then if you do want to do something a little bit different or you want to get a new curriculum, I cannot recommend more highly than the mathematical reasoning I don't want to call it curriculum, but curriculum workbooks from the publisher Critical Thinking Company. I absolutely love these. Go up to, I think, seventh grade. Okay. They even have them for algebra and things like that, but I especially love them for the K through seventh grade. And the reason why I love them, this one is level C. So they don't even do it by grade level. But when you look at the stuff that's in it, it's kind of like second, third grade level. Okay. But the reason why I love it is because, first of all, it's very colorful, it's very bright. Kids that are sixth grade and under, their eyes are still developing. This makes the math inviting, right? It has really fun things to do. So they've got the traditional where you work on the problems, but then they also have some fun things to do as well. Like I said, it's colorful. There's not a whole lot of practice on each page. I mean, look at this. It's just enough. I mean, if your kid can do 10, 15 problems, he doesn't need to do 20, 25 of them. Okay. And then the other reason why I love mathematical reasoning is it does have the review in it, but unlike the other traditional textbooks where you do a practice where you're learning the new skill, you practice that like 4 or 5 times, and then the review questions have the new stuff and the old stuff in it every single day. The way that this one works is that if you can see, it's color coded here. And so in the greens, let's just say the green section, it's all the things that they should probably learn in second or third grade, right? So it's all of it in the green. And then when you get to the blue section, it's the same skills, okay, but now written with different problems. I mean, look at these word problems. I would much rather do this word problem page than the kind you see in some of the traditional, right? So it's the same skills. It's just now using different word problems and different exercises to do. Then when you get to the purple, again, it's the same, but it's all the skills that they probably should learn in second or third grade, but they're reviewing them now all together. So I just really love the way it looks. I love the way it's organized. It's simple for the kids to do, especially on their own. It's not very teacher directed. So it's called Mathematical Reasoning by the company Critical Thinking. It's really a lot of fun. Okay. All right. So went over a little bit today. Sorry about that. Again, I will be here every month doing a live Q&A at my channel. If you're interested in me answering your specific question, just shoot me an email on Instagram, send me a direct message. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you could even put the questions down in the comments, and I will make sure the next time I do a live, I attack those questions first, and then I'll get to the questions that are in the sidebar. Okay. If you're interested in taking a look at my Thanksgiving mini unit that had all those different things I was talking about, again, it's called Traditions and Treasures, a Thanksgiving mini unit. You can find it at my website, coffeewithcarrie.org. All right, guys, I'll see you soon. And don't forget to hang out with me for the next high school huddle if you have a high schooler.